Y.A. Black is the young man's name. First name is spelled Y-A-H-Y-A, but it's pronounced Y-A. And you'll want to pronounce it correctly because you probably don't want to make somebody mad when they stand 6 feet 6 inches, 336 pounds. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Black was, of course, the Steelers' 5th round pick in the NFL draft over the weekend, and he was one of several players added to the defensive line, somehow even bigger than Derek Harmon, somehow even bigger than actually anybody at all on the entire existing roster. And that moved Mike Tomlin to say this beautiful thing.
Like I've been saying throughout the process, he's a big chassis, okay? There's F-150s. He's like an F-350. He's a big man and really stout against the run. And, you can always use a skill set like that, certainly.
Oh, man, F-150s and F-350. Look, there was a lot of this type of conversation over the weekend, and it's not, as Tomlin would additionally acknowledge, an accident. The Steelers, according to Tomlin, according to Omar Khan, and I can only imagine how Andy Weidel feels about this, set out purposely to get bigger, stronger, meaner, what have you. And whether or not Black or Harmon or any of these players end up succeeding, the effort, the direction in this regard were unmistakable. And for the fullest context here, they've been trying to do this thing on both sides of the ball. And obviously, if you go back over the previous 2 drafts, the first 2 under Omar, you're talking about offensive tackles galore. You're talking about Zach Frazier at center in the 2nd round. A lot of this, not all of it, but a lot of it has been about the bulk, the beef, the trenches. Throw DK Metcalf in there, too. Tomlin did. Tomlin did that on his own in a different response he was giving on a different subject, but he went out of his way to point out that they just added one of the biggest, baddest wide receivers around. So they love this. They're putting this out there. They're not only talking about it, they're doing it. They're living it. But that, to me, is where I do a hard pivot and try to align that with Arthur Smith's insistence, and I mean insistence, that the offense he wants to craft is not going to be some 1.5 yards in a cloud of dust concoction, a term he kept using over the weekend. Again and again and again was explosive. Yes, he wants his group to be physical. Yes, he wants them to be large and imposing, but it's with an aim of becoming explosive. And yeah, if you just walk in off the figurative street and hear that, it sounds like wanting to have your cake and eat it too. Of course, everybody would want to be big and enormous and fly all over the field and score lots of points on 55-yard passes and 70-yard sprints up the gut. Nothing novel about that. But I am glad that Smith specifically stressed that, because it actually is the aim of the people in that building, especially him. His belief is that the Steelers' offense won't get to where it needs to be until it can do any number of things, not just 1 or 2 things, but any number of them, essentially at will. His further belief, and I happen to know that this one is shared by the head coach, is that the Steelers' problem isn't so much what they do on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. It's that they're constantly encountering 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 because they don't do nearly enough on the first 2 downs, and they don't generate nearly enough splash. So the real rhythm emanates from the confidence to be able to A, run block, B, pass block, C, block at the edges, including your wide receivers, but particularly with your multiple tight ends. From there, keep the defenses that you're facing honest and stop allowing them to, my goodness, we've been watching a half decade of stacked boxes now, so that you can do any of those things. You can go and get your 6-yard run. You can get your 11-yard gain over the middle by throwing to Pat Freiermuth. And yeah, especially now with Metcalf in tow, you can throw to both DK and to George Pickens down deep without having to wonder which one of them's being double covered, because you can't double cover both of them. So it's not about a persona. It's not about an attitude or an approach, the way I think some are going to end up characterizing this acquisition of size on both sides of the ball. It's about being able to do more things. It's about expanding the weaponry. And listen, that's no different on the other side. The reason the Ravens ran for those 299 yards on the ground in that playoff game was first and foremost that Terrell Austin and Tomlin had a terrible defensive plan. It had worked in the previous meeting, but this was an AFC North opponent. They had to be anticipating that they would have adjusted. Ravens adjusted. Steelers didn't until the third quarter. But even past that, the Ravens knew where to attack on that line with either Derrick Henry or, when the Steelers insanely kept packing down on Henry even when he didn't have the football, with Lamar Jackson. And that, in turn, limited everything else that the Steelers would have hoped to achieve defensively. Now you bring your safeties up closer to the line. You're counting on your corners to stick with one-on-one coverage. You're hoping that any of your inside linebackers can make a play other than Elandon Roberts, who, I don't get me started on Roberts being let go. But to be not just a good football team, but a contending football team, you gotta have this component that they've been adding. Doesn't limit them. If anything, it does the polar opposite. It expands their repertoire on both sides. When we come back, J1Q. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George is a personal injury law firm in Western Pennsylvania that represents injured people in automobile accidents, workers' compensation cases, and medical malpractice claims. The attorneys at Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George pride themselves in doing what they say they're going to do. It's important to them that when they make you a promise, they keep that promise. And this law firm has been keeping promises for over 80 years. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George has been AV rated. That's the highest rating a law firm can receive for legal ability and ethics. And the lawyers at the firm have been designated super lawyers, that's a real thing, for over 15 years. Rare combination there. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George has offices in Cranberry, Newcastle, Beaver Falls, Butler, and Elwood City. Learn more about them at lgkg.com or by calling 888-842-5454. Again, that's 888-842-5454. Today's J1Q comes from Brandon Jones, who asks, DK, do you think the Steelers could now roll out some 4 down lineman sets with Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton, Y.A. Black, and Derek Harmon? I envision a 4-2-5 defense, but I also realize that you can't take your 2 best pass rushers off the field. Schematically, they'd have to figure out how to incorporate T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith. This, Brandon, will not happen. This thing that you described. The 4 down linemen will not happen. The 4-2-5 absolutely will not happen, because the Steelers don't just have T.J. and Alex. They've also got Nick Herbig, and now, of course, the 4th rounder, Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State. Carl Dunbar, the defensive line coach, was one of several assistants that was brought in to speak with us over the weekend. And if any such thing was even in the dream state, it would have come out in some form in talking about Y.A. Black specifically and where Black would fit in on that line. Now, what Coach Dunbar did bring up, and this is one blunt man, the way he speaks, he's not one of those that's trying to smooth you out with words or avoid telling you what the reality is. He's just as real gets, is that when there are 3 down linemen, they continue to believe in Benton for that position. They're not going to be bouncing Benton around or trying to find some other role for him. They want him at what they interpret as the modern nose position. They want him getting back after the quarterback. They want him to be stout on the run. And if it were a starting three, theoretically here, not to lay too much on a kid, but he is a first-round pick, it would be Benton between Harmon and Hayward. Now, I say that, and I'm also aware that the overwhelming majority of the Steelers' defensive snaps don't have 3 down linemen. You can call it a 3-4. It doesn't mean anything because they go with 2. They began doing that in earnest when it was Cam and Stephon Tuitt, and they really haven't gotten away from it. And within that, the other point that Coach Dunbar stressed more than once is that they can't be running Cam into the ground. They need Cam to be fresh, not just in September and October and not just healing up on the bye week. Here again, if your aim is to be the stronger team as you get deeper into the regular season and, of course, into the playoffs, you'd much, much, much rather have Cam being in a good place. The best way to do that, or the best way to attempt to assure that, you can never make guarantees about stuff like this, is to not have him go 70, 75 snaps a game. So what you'd be working toward here, more than anything, is one scenario where you've got a couple of guys who can be down linemen and really get after it, and a couple other guys who can even go out there as a pairing and similarly get after it. Coach Dunbar made clear that numbers were and are a priority, meaning were going into the draft and are going into the next season. They want to have a lot of these guys, and I can promise you that's going to end up influencing roster decisions coming out of Latrobe as well. But no, to reiterate, they're not changing formations or anything like that. I appreciate the question. It's a good one. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. Don't forget, we've got a double shot coming up today at 4 p.m. Eastern. That's our live video that we do every weekday. You can find it on YouTube. You, of course, can find it on DK Pittsburgh Sports. Come check out all the fun that we have on that thing every day. And this here program will be back tomorrow morning.